This members wallet audit series has quickly become one of y'all's favorites on the channel, and I think it's resonated so well for one main reason. It highlights how even smart, intentional credit card users are still wasting tons of money on their credit cards. Whether it's chasing the wrong perks, holding cards that no longer fit your lifestyle, or just missing out on massive earning potential, these mistakes can add up quick. So today, I'll be reviewing 4 more of my channel members' credit card setups, and I have some takeaways for all of you, even if your setups look completely different. And since I constantly get asked about this underneath each of the member wallet audit videos, there are 3 main ways that you can get your wallet looked at by me. First, you can become a channel member by clicking the little join button underneath this video if you're watching on browser and get on the wait list for future episodes like this. Second, you can ask me very specific questions about your setup through Instagram, Discord, or email, but I won't be able to do a full wallet audit there. Or third, if you want the absolute deepest dive into your setup, of course you can book one-on-one calls with me, which I link in the description of every one of my videos. Now, let's jump into wallet number 1 that came from Spencer. Like I'll do with each setup going forward, let me give you a quick outline of where Spencer sits today. First of all, he has a really sick name, of course, but he got serious about the credit card game in 2024 and has gone pretty ham since. He's currently at 624 with Chase's 524 rule and doesn't drop to 424 until September 12th, 2026 if he doesn't apply for any more credit cards. Based on his submission, he spends a lot of money annually, up to about $150,000, so optimizing his card setup is going to be really important today. He prefers to earn points and miles and doesn't really use his cashback cards right now, but is unsure if he should change his approaches going forward. As for his travel habits, he takes 5 to 10 trips per year domestically with 0 international trips, and he likes to stay at Marriott properties and fly with Delta. Lender-wise, he stated that he likes Chase and Amex most because of their transferability to Marriott and Delta, but we'll talk later about whether or not you should actually be using your UR and MR points in that fashion. Going back to his annual spending, there are 2 massive gaps that I saw right off the rip that need to be addressed, and that's his rent spend as well as his miscellaneous spend. When it comes to rent payments, there's really one answer to his problem here, and that of course is the Bilt MasterCard. At a minimum, he'll get 1x back on all of his rent purchases on this credit card, which boosts his annual earnings by 40,000 points per year. And the only downside to this one for his situation is that it will add to his 524 count and push him out of Chase cards until November 25th of 2026 instead of that September date. And while rent is a massive category for him at that $40,000 in spend per year, his miscellaneous spending category is much bigger than that. And if you include shopping in that total, then he's spending about $58,000 in this category alone. Or I guess you could say lack of any categories technically. In my opinion, the Chase Freedom Unlimited would have been preferable to get as his catch-all card since he did note that he likes to have Chase points. But like I mentioned, he won't be able to get that card until September of 2026 if he doesn't get the Bilt card. Just to do some quick math here to see which route he should go, getting a Bilt card and maybe a catch-all card from a different bank rather than waiting to get the Chase Freedom Unlimited. He's currently getting 1x back on his catch-all category, so that's a total of 58,000 points per year. And if he waited until September of 2026 to get the Chase Freedom Unlimited, he'd miss out on 50,000 points worth of rent payments just to boost his miscellaneous spend at that point by 29,000 points per year. But if instead he went for the Bilt card now and then got a catch-all card from a different bank, like maybe the City Double Cash, he could earn that 50,000 points from his rent payments, plus he would get an additional 58,000 points back from his miscellaneous spend immediately. So when I break it down like that, it seems like it's a no-brainer to just go that route, but what's the holdup? Well, first, that pushes him out of Chase's credit cards for a longer period of time, all the way until December 9th of 2026. However, I think that's a small price to pay, basically an additional 3 months of waiting for Chase cards to lock in the additional 108,000 points. But another consideration is that he would be extending himself into another currency if he did get something like the City Double Cash. Right now, he has 8 credit cards in 6 different points currencies, so if he is trying to simplify a little bit here and not continue to expand, then he might actually want to do something a bit different here and get a card like the Amex Blue Business Plus for his miscellaneous spend. That would give him the same 2x back for his catch-all category up to $50,000 spent per year. And it would keep him in a currency that he stated he likes, but whether or not he wants to use that as his dedicated catch-all is kind of up to how he manages his business expenses. No matter how many credit cards you have, an easy way to ensure that you're not leaving money on the table is with the sponsor of today's video, Max Rewards, specifically their automatic offer activation feature that you get through their paid tier, Max Rewards Gold. With that membership, any of your cards linked to their app will have all of their offers automatically activated for them, meaning that you don't have to go into each lender's apps specifically to click the little plus icons next to each offer. It's all done for you in the background. Last year alone, this feature saved me over $100, which more than covered the annual subscription of Max Rewards Gold. And that was with me not changing my spending habits at all or even checking the offers on my cards. So there's no telling how much more I could have saved if I just even went into the app once a month to see, maybe how to switch my spend to certain cards to activate certain offers. This is perfect for times when you're doing some extra shopping. And while it is a really nice feature, of course, Max Rewards has plenty of free features as well. And a couple of my favorites are going to be the best card feature that tells you exactly what card to use depending on where you're shopping to get the most value back, as well as their offer trackers for either new card welcome offers or retention offers if, for one of your existing cards. But what I use more than anything is just their home screen, taking a quick look to see exactly how many points I have across all my cards. Plus, I can see my total card balances, my bill due dates, and so much more. Bottom line, if you want to get a better handle on your credit card setup as a whole, I would highly suggest that you check out Max Rewards. And if you download it through the link in my description and during the sign up process enter the promo code Spencer, you'll now get a 3-month discount off of your annual Max Rewards Gold subscription if you ever do decide to upgrade. And this offer is 3 times longer than what I had in previous videos. So now would be the time to take advantage of it if you want to. As always, thank you to Max Rewards for sponsoring this video. Let's get back into the content. Now, speaking of points currencies, let's talk about that whole Marriott and Delta situation and whether or not he should be transferring his Ultimate Rewards points and membership rewards points to those different partners. First things first, there are only a couple of very specific scenarios in which I would ever recommend transferring any of your transferable currencies to Marriott, and that's during transfer bonus periods or just needing to top off your points to book a specific trip. Hopefully, you would get to do both at the same time. To oversimplify it here, Marriott points are worth roughly 0.7 cents per point based on the points guys' valuations, and Ultimate Rewards points and membership rewards points are worth 2.05 cents per point each. So by transferring Chase or American Express points to Marriott, you're effectively more than halving the value that you could have gotten, and obviously that's not a great deal. But to play devil's advocate here, let's say that you get a 65% transfer bonus, like we have going on at the time of me recording, from Chase to Marriott. Well, now a trip that you were considering transferring, you say 100,000 Chase points over to Marriott for would only cost you 60,000 Chase points, and that's a massive savings. Again, I wouldn't recommend booking a Marriott stay fully using Chase points, but say you just needed an extra 20,000 points to top off your Marriott balance in order to book a trip that you really want to take. That's more than acceptable to do during a transfer bonus period for sure. Now, the same kind of thing can be said for Delta, but Delta's point valuations are a bit higher at 1.2 cents per point. So there is more room to kind of finagle here. Like maybe you'll find a really good deal for a domestic flight, and yeah, sure, it makes sense to transfer your Amex points over there. Or maybe you're like me and you just need to book a quick positioning flight that only costs like 20,000 points. But even with that leniency, it's not something that I would necessarily default to doing with my Amex points unless you are getting a good deal. A lot of those good deals could come from booking high-class international fares with Delta, but at the same time, Spencer doesn't have any focus on international travel, so I'd recommend he ask himself if something even simpler like the Chase Sapphire Reserve would be a good option for him. The Chase Sapphire Reserve is my premium travel credit card of choice, and I've covered it in full detail in the past, so I'm going to keep it brief today. But the main reason I consider it for his use case is because you can get a boost on your points through Chase's travel portal with this card. Initially, when I started scripting this video, I thought it would be almost a no-brainer for him to go this route when the Chase Sapphire Reserve hadn't undergone the big changes that we saw a few weeks back. But unfortunately, they've made some pretty massive negative changes to this points boost feature, at least in my opinion. It used to be a 1.5 cent per point guaranteed redemption rate through the portal for any travel, making it a really great domestic travel credit card for people who are just looking for something simple where they know they'll get a good rate back. Now they have a new points boost feature where you can get either 1 cent per point for all of your travel or 2 cents per point, which sounds great, but that 2 cents per point is only reserved for either high class airfare bookings or more luxury hotels. The card still could make sense for him if he's willing to spend a little bit extra for those higher class fares, but I definitely wouldn't stretch your lifestyle to fit a card like this, especially if the credits don't make sense for you, because now it's a coupon book and you need to be using a lot of the credits to get value back from it. But yeah, I guess the verdict is still out on whether or not that points boost feature will be a massive flop. I'm under the assumption that it will be, but I don't know. I guess time will tell. Speaking more on the cards that he already has in his setup, the Delta Reserve and Amex Gold are ones to keep questioning annually with how much they cost. I think the Delta Reserve could still very well make sense even if he got the Chase Sapphire Reserve card, but that all comes down to whether or not the benefits and credits on the Delta Reserve fit his travel habits naturally. He could also consider one of the higher tier Marriott cards for the same reason, like maybe in his use case, the Ritz-Carlton card would be great since he already has the Marriott Bonvoy Boundless card, and if it's been open for a year and has above a $10,000 credit limit on it, he could product change up to the Ritz-Carlton card and lock in some added luxury travel benefits. As for the Amex Gold, it's great that he's earning a lot of MR points with his dining and grocery spend on it, but he does have a lot of overlap, particularly in the dining category, so it is worth reanalyzing every year to see whether or not he could use an alternative that's cheaper instead. Bottom line, he seems to have a lot of heavy focus on certain spend categories like dining and groceries, but those purchases only combine for $14,000 worth of spend annually. And on the other $98,000 worth of spend on the rent and miscellaneous spend categories, we don't have any coverage at all. So obviously that's where the next card additions need to be focused. Next up is Tyron, who started getting credit cards back at the end of 2019. However, he hasn't applied for a new card in a while now, especially when it comes to personal cards. So his 524 status is at 024. What I would do to have that 524 status. His highest spend categories are dining, groceries, and utilities. He has a preference to earn more points and miles. Only travels once per year internationally, usually to the Caribbean, frequently flies with American Airlines, but isn't partial to them necessarily, and he wants to dive into the Chase ecosystem, both personal and business. Looking at his 8-card setup, he obviously had a hard preference for cashback up until now, so we need to find a way to smoothly transition him into a hybrid setup. He already started doing so himself in both the Amex and Capital One ecosystems, but like I noted, he now wants to go the Chase route, so let's talk about how he can do this the most effectively. Luckily, he is at 024, so he has a lot of room to basically get whatever Chase credit cards he wants to at this point, and since he has an established credit history and some higher annual fee cards in his setup, he could technically just go straight for the Chase Sapphire Preferred if he wanted to. The main reason I consider going that route over getting one of the Freedom cards first is just if he has some travel coming up where he could really well utilize the points from the welcome offer as well as the transferability to Chase's partners. But if he has a lot of big time until his next international trip comes up, then he could easily just go get one or both of the Chase Freedom cards, lock in those welcome offers, start putting some spin on them, and then when that big trip does come up, he could transfer those points from the Freedom cards to the Sapphire Preferred and transfer those out to partners. If you only wanted to get one of the Freedom cards, I would lean towards the Chase Freedom Flex for his situation, just to cover a couple of rotating quarterly categories at 5x back, which is generally the opposite of what I recommend because I think it's good to start with a catch-all card that has a solid base, which the Chase Freedom Unlimited does. But Tyron already has the Venture X that he uses as his catch-all at 2x back, so the Freedom Unlimited becomes more of a sign-up bonus card than one you would actually put a ton of spend on. Just to clarify one of his questions on his submission form, just in case some of y'all out there have the same one, all of Chase's flagship credit cards, the Chase Freedom cards, Sapphire cards, and Ink cards, all earn Chase Ultimate Rewards points. And you can move those points between any of the Ultimate Reward point earning cards that you have in your setup. So effectively, it's just one big pool. Because of that, what I recommend people do is hold on to any of your Chase Ultimate Rewards points if you want to eventually use them for travel until you get one of the cards from Chase that allows you access to their partners, which are the Chase Sapphire Preferred, Chase Sapphire Reserve, as well as the Reserve for Business now, and the Chase Ink Preferred. For his specific situation, he noted that he loves to travel to the Caribbean specifically, and this is going to be a little bit harder to use your points at higher cent per point values, but I did a quick seats.arrow search, and depending on where he's flying out of, he may be able to take advantage of a hidden way to get a ton of value from your points that most people don't think of. And that's by booking your flight through Airline Alliance partners rather than direct with the company that you will be flying with. For example, top of the list here shows an Air Canada Aeroplan flight for just 15,000 points. And you may be thinking, why the heck would I fly Air Canada to the Caribbean? But digging into the details here, we can see that this Air Canada flight is actually a United flight that you can book via Aeroplan. So now those Capital One miles that a lot of people find to be a bit hard to use in certain situations become so much more valuable. A lot of these big airline programs like Aeroplan are not only partnered with just one company, but they're partnered with Capital One, Amex, Chase, and more. And you can do this across all the different alliances as well, that including OneWorld, SkyTeam, and Star Alliance. Now that that's understood, we've discussed adding a couple of personal Chase cards to his setup, but what I'm more excited about here is his openness to get into the business side of their arsenal. As I've always talked about, Chase Ink cards feel like cheat codes to me because of the welcome offer potential you can get with them. Like their two free cards, the Chase Ink Cash and Chase Ink Unlimited, frequently have 90,000 point welcome offers on them, and the $95 Chase Ink Preferred has had up to 120,000 points. So pair that with their lack of rules about how frequently you can re-get a welcome offer on each of those cards, even under the same business, and you're sitting on a mountain of Chase Ultimate Rewards points that are just waiting to be tapped into. So the Ink cards are the first subset of credit cards that I have on his roadmap. But down there, I also threw on the US Bank Cash Plus since he said utilities is one of his highest spend categories, and he doesn't have any coverage for that just yet. The US Bank Cash Plus gives you 5% back on 2 categories of your choice every month, as well as 2% category of your choice. But one of the 5% options is utilities. So obviously this would be a good set and forget card for those purchases. Matter of fact, with my move coming up, I should probably look into getting one myself. So that might go on a future roadmap video. I didn't talk much about his current card since I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse in that regard with these high annual fee ones. But to quickly summarize my thought, if an annual fee is giving you positive value naturally, then that's great. You can keep it. But make sure you take into account opportunity cost when calculating that effective annual fee, since we have so much optionality on the market these days. And as I always say, I don't think it's really necessary to cancel your no annual fee credit cards unless you have a really good reason to do so, since they boost your average age of accounts as well as your total available credit. If you want to learn more about what I wish I knew before I started canceling credit cards, check out this video afterwards. But now let's move on to longtime channel supporter, John McKinstry. John became pretty active in the credit card game in 2021, but had a few cards before that. But he's been really good about spacing out his applications, so his 524 status is just 324. His highest spending categories are restaurants, groceries, and gas, and I feel like his gas category is actually a bit higher than the average person, so I will keep that in mind going forward. As for his earning preferences, points and miles are what he's leaning towards these days, and he takes 5 to 6 domestic trips per year, but the catch is that they are all road trips. That means he has no airline preference, but he frequents hotels from Hilton, IHG, and Choice, making his lender preference Chase, Citi, and Wells Fargo. John has the most credit cards out of anybody we're talking about today at 14. So to cover his overall strategy at a high level for you, at first glance, I noticed that he started in the Capital One ecosystem with the Venture One card. And I actually know from talking to John in the past that this used to be a Quicksilver card that he product changed. But since then, he's completed the Capital One trifecta by adding another Quicksilver card as well as the Saver Rewards card. Eventually, when he's flying more than he is now, I could see justification for upgrading one of those cards to the Venture X, but theoretically, it would be smarter to just apply fresh for it to lock in another welcome offer. And he can do that even while holding the Venture One, since Capital One treats those cards as separate products. Whether or not he could get approved with how many cards he has is another question, but just thought I would mention it. Outside of the Capital One ecosystem, he has also completed the Chase trifecta, which gave him access to a more flexible currency that could be used at higher values in multiple different regards. So while he could before redeem his Capital One miles for cashback, he would want to do so on one of the cashback credit cards. But if he earned any miles on a Venture card, the cashback redemption rate is only half a cent per point. And if he transferred any of his cashback earned on the Quicksilver or Saver Rewards to that Venture card, he also would lose out on that 1 cent per point cashback rate. So overall, it's just a bit trickier than Chase, where at any time you can redeem any of your UR points for a full 1 cent per point. Not only that, but obviously with Chase, you can also redeem at higher redemption rates through their travel portal, although they did kind of screw that up a bit recently, or transfer out to their long list of great partners, which I prefer over Capital One, but both are very solid. I know that Chase has a lot of overlap among their cards, but they're still my favorite lender with how flexible they are, as well as how generous they are with their welcome offer eligibility. I've heard rumors about them maybe getting a little bit more strict on this and implementing their own kind of pop-up jail. I don't know if that's at all justified yet, at least at the time of recording, so take that with a grain of salt. But up until now, you've been able to get a new welcome offer on all of your Freedom cards every 24 months, as long as you downgrade or cancel it and then reapply. The same is true after 48 months on your Sapphire cards, and the Ink cards really have no restrictions on them. Aside from those two trifectas, he's touched on the hotel side well with the IHG Premier card, Hilton Honors card, and Hilton Surpass card. I think these were excellent additions to his setup because of his preference for those specific brands, on top of the fact that he loves to road trip and he needs access to some of the largest footprint hotels out there. So on top of him earning a lot of value from the welcome offer on those cards, he's also gained some base level status with these brands, which I'm sure has made his road trips a lot better. I assume that he'll eventually grab the Hilton Aspire card whenever it makes sense for him. That way he can kind of complete that Hilton trifecta, I guess you could call it. And after doing that, he could start working through the Hilton Carousel, as I call it, where you effectively downgrade all of your Hilton cards to the Hilton Honors one and wait for upgrade offers on each, and keep doing that over and over to effectively earn hundreds of thousands of Hilton Honors points. After that, he's filled in the rest of his spending category gaps with cashback cards, making it a really effective hybrid approach, which I love. What sticks out to me about John's setup is that he's been extremely patient with his applications and only really added no annual fee or very low annual fee cards up until this point. And after speaking with him over the past 2 years of him being a member, which shout out to you, John, that's awesome. I know that his cautious approach has saved him a lot of money. Too often, I see people rush into high annual fee credit cards that really don't fit their needs. But John's on the opposite side of the spectrum, where he's so cautious with it that he only adds cards he knows will give him plenty of positive value. And I think that's just a much better approach to avoid wasting money. So I really have no issues with this setup at all. This is the first time we've had no questionable cards on the list either. And that's just a testament to good credit card road mapping on his part. As for future card additions, I know he already has this under control, but I'll still list some ideas. The next most obvious step, in my opinion, would be getting one or both of the Choice credit cards from Wells Fargo. And the reason I say that is because Choice has a very long list of hotel brands underneath them, like Cambria, Radisson, Comfort, Sleep Inn, Quality Inn, etc. And John's preference is to road trip, which is where those kinds of properties are located all along the highways and stuff like that. So to me, it makes sense to consider their cards, not only to lock in some great welcome offer points, but specific to the higher tier one, which only has a $95 annual fee, he could get even more broad status as well as a free night certificate and much more. Other than that, John and I have discussed his desire to eventually add some business credit cards to his setup. So of course, I threw the Chase Ink cards on here. But if he wasn't sure if he'd get approved for those right off the bat on the business side, he could get something like the Amex Blue Business Plus, which is what I did. And that kicked off my business card journey really strong. Also, I have the Venture X down there, which we talked about earlier, alongside the Citi Strata Premier, pending any changes to that card, just so he could get access to Citi's transfer partners if he wanted to do so with that Citi custom cash he already has. Keep killing it, John, and thank you so much for all the support over the years. Now, let's talk about Alan's setup. Even though his first card was opened back in 2019, I wouldn't say his true credit card journey started until the end of 2024. And since he only has 4 cards in the last 6 years, his 524 status is low at 224. His top spending categories are in line with what most others stated in the order of rent, miscellaneous spend, dining, groceries, and gas. And he prefers to earn points and miles since he takes 2 to 3 domestic trips per year with 1 to 2 international ones sprinkled in. He didn't state any hotel preferences, but he does like to fly with Alaska, Delta, and United. And finally, he prefers Chase, Capital One, and Amex as lenders, but is open to anything. Alan has a really simple setup of 4 credit cards, but what's unique about it is that 2 of those credit cards are really high annual fee ones, those being the Chase Sapphire Reserve and Capital One Venture X. Usually I can't talk about everybody's cards one by one in these videos, but since he only has a few, we actually get to do that. So let's start at the top. The Chase Freedom Unlimited, that's a great starter credit card in my opinion. And I actually just recently helped one of my buddies start his credit card journey and found that a lot of my recommendations, even from a couple of years ago, are still valid for the most part. As he was somebody with no credit history yet, I was a bit hesitant having him go straight for the Chase Freedom Unlimited. And yes, he could of course go for the Chase Freedom Rise instead, but he didn't have a Chase bank account. So I had him fill out the pre-approval form for Discover's credit cards. And luckily he was pre-approved for the tried and true Discover It cashback card. So he went ahead and accepted that, and his card recently came in the mail, and he's off and running in his credit card game. Back to the Chase Freedom Unlimited, it's just such a great starter card because it gives you that flat 1.5x earning rate on top of, 3x back on dining, 3x back on drugstores, and 5x back through their travel portal. Not to mention it's a Chase credit card, and it's good to get Chase credit cards early on, since then you won't have to worry so much about your 524 status in the future, which is funny that I say that as a guy with 20 credit cards who still cares about his 524 status, but I digress. Further than that, Chase's credit cards again give you the flexibility to decide whether you want to be on Team Cashback or Team Travel, since you have good redemption rates in all regards. After the Freedom Unlimited, Alan moved over to the Alaska Visa, and I completely understand why. He mentioned that he prefers flying with Alaska, and as most people do when they're starting out, you figure you might as well just get their airline-specific credit card to get some good benefits. The easiest way to make back the annual fee on the Alaska Visa is through the free checked bags that it offers for you and up to 6 guests. At a quoted savings of $70 per person per round-trip flight, that means that even just 2 solo trips a year with Alaska would cover the annual fee for you by a good margin. Earning category-wise, though, it's nothing special. The only thing I would ever really consider using it for would be the 3x back on Alaska purchases, because that's also where you would put like your check bags, for example, to activate that benefit. But as with every airline and hotel card, the reason you don't want to put a ton of spend on them is because you're locked into just that specific airline or hotel currency. So unless you're just chasing some really high status or something specific on one of those cards, I recommend putting your spend on a transferable currency card instead, like those from Chase, Amex, Capital One, Citi, etc. That way you have more flexibility. If you can't tell, flexibility to me is one of the most important things to focus on, because you never want to be stuck with points that you can't find use for. Next, he has the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and I'm curious to hear his thoughts now that these changes have been implemented, where the card costs $245 extra per year, $795 total, has a ton of new lifestyle credits to possibly make up the difference depending on who you are, and now utilizes that points boost feature rather than the guaranteed 1.5 cent per point redemption rate through the portal that it had before. Not to mention they got rid of the 3x back on general travel purchases, which was a big hit to people that use the card for Airbnbs, cruises, transit, etc., but it didn't really impact me a ton. And now the card is basically much worse or much better for folks, and I'm curious to see where Alan lies. With his use case, I would assume that he was utilizing the 1.5 cent per point guaranteed redemption rate in the portal for Delta and United flights specifically, maybe even the Alaska flights too, but kind of just depends on his strategy there. And I say that because he could get a higher guaranteed rate by using Chase's points through the portal than by transferring direct to United, which has an average point valuation of 1.2. And he didn't have any direct access to Delta. So if he's flying with them, I mean, he would have to be using the portal, I guess, unless he's paying cash. But now things have obviously changed, so this could drastically decrease his value going forward. I'm not sure. I didn't mention this earlier with Spencer's setup, but current Chase Sapphire Reserve cardholders will not see these changes come into effect on their account until October 26th of 2025. Plus, any points earned or transferred to your Sapphire Reserve before October 25th, 2025 can still utilize that 1.5 cent per point redemption rate on those points until October 25th of 2027. So maybe he will keep this card for a bit longer, even if it doesn't make as much sense for him now. We'll just have to see. Then we come to his most recent addition, the Capital One Venture X, which despite the negative changes they made to their lounge access policies for guests and authorized users, is still really easy to get positive value from utilizing the $300 annual travel credit and 10,000 anniversary miles. Both the Chase Sapphire Reserve and Venture X need to be heavily audited every year to see if they still make sense. And while in past episodes of this series, I've been pretty against people holding 2 premium transferable currency credit cards, I think that holding one, like the Chase Sapphire Reserve, as well as the Venture X, which is like a pseudo premium travel credit card, is justifiable with how easy it is to make back the annual fee on that card. Now, looking at his annual spend and what coverage he has, I see a few main gaps: gas, groceries, and rent. To fill those, the first most obvious one is the Built MasterCard for his rent purchases, alongside flexible category cards like the Citi Custom Cash to cover something like gas maybe, or maybe based on his lender preference, the Chase Freedom Flex could be a good option. And I know that doesn't guarantee you any coverage for the gas and groceries that we still have remaining, but for at least 3 months out of the year, you should get each of those covered. So it is something, not to mention all the other categories that they cover for you. So I don't know. I think it's a decent one to consider. But no matter what, here's what I would do immediately. And this goes for any of y'all out there that have a pesky category that you need covered. I would go get the PayPal debit card while it's still around. That card is basically a better Citi Custom Cash, depending on the categories that you need covered, because it gives you 5% back up to $1,000 spent on a few select categories. I use mine for 5% back on my grocery purchases. That leaves me the Citi Custom Cash to cover my gas purchases, and I really have all of my high spend categories covered at a respectable rate, which I didn't necessarily have before the PayPal debit card. Remember too that this is a debit card, so you can get it without adding to your credit report at all, and that will help garden your 524 status too. Also, it seems like Alan's approach is to keep a very simple credit card setup, so by getting the PayPal debit card, that might further contribute to his overall goals. In this episode, I didn't give a single credit card that I would recommend immediately canceling, which is pretty odd that it turned out this way, because in past episodes, that was definitely not the case. And if you want to see the last one I did to continue helping you refine your credit card strategy, click into this video next. As always, Odin and I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and liking the video. And of course, we'll catch you guys next time.